Hello and welcome. I'm Asuma Katauka and you're watching Primetime Asia on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. A diplomatic clash between China and Japan over recent remarks by Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi is heating up at the United Nations. Chinese Ambassador Fu Kong has sent a second letter to Secretary General Antonio Guterres while urging Tokyo to retract the earlier remarks. Chinese and Japanese Coast Guard ships have collided in fresh confrontations near disputed Diaoyu Senkaku Islands, which are claimed by both as their own territory, while China's spokesperson for the Coast Guard has said that the Chinese vessels took necessary control measures and issued warnings to the Japanese boat. Hong Kong's deadliest fire in decades has claimed 156 lives, prompting city leader John Lee to order a judge-led independent investigation into building renovation oversight after police arrested 15 people for manslaughter and others in a parallel corruption probe, as rights groups urge the government not to suppress criticism. According to the Indonesian National Disaster Agency, the death toll from the devastating floods and landslides in Sumatra has soared to 753 people, with 504 people still missing. This marks a sharp jump from the 604 deaths reported yesterday, underscoring the rapidly escalating humanitarian crisis. India's DGCA has launched an investigation into Air India after the airline operated an Airbus A320 8 times without a valid airworthiness review certificate, leading to the aircraft being grounded and staff de-rostered. The incident marks yet another safety lapse for Air India. Russian diplomat Dmitry Peskov speaks on the impending Witkoff-Putin meeting to be held in Moscow. The diplomat also speaks on India-Russia's defense ties and a potential $100 billion trade with India by 2030. As Russia in Ukraine peace talks gains momentum, U.S. President Donald Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff and son-in-law Jared Kushner to meet Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow this week. Pope Leo is ending his first foreign trip with leading a mass for 100,000 worshippers in Lebanon, praying at the 2020 Beirut port blast site and visiting a psychiatric hospital run by Franciscan nuns. He has urged Lebanon's religious leaders to unite amid ongoing economic turmoil in a country with the largest Christian population in the Middle East. Russian President Vladimir Putin will begin his two-day visit to India on December 4th and 5th, marking his first trip since the Russia-Ukraine war. The visit will aim to strengthen the historic strategic partnership between New Delhi and Moscow, with high-level discussions planned across defense, energy, and trade sectors. On the agenda, leaders are expected to explore expanded defense cooperation, including the potential purchase of additional S-400 air defense systems and discussions on the advanced Su-57 fighter jets. Russia has already delivered 3 out of 5 S-400 regiments under the existing $5 billion deal, with the remaining units scheduled for delivery by mid-2026. Moscow has also offered technology transfer for up to 50% of the S-400 system, allowing Indian firms to participate in local assembly and missile production. Trade and energy ties are also under focus. Both countries have initiated talks for a free trade agreement with the Russian-led Eurasian Economic Union, while Russia seeks technical support for its oil projects under sanctions. India, meanwhile, aims to restore its 20% stake in the Sakhalin-1 oil project and balance its energy imports amid rising purchases of U.S. crude. Despite a decline in Russian arms imports over the last decade, India remains dependent on Russian equipment for nearly 60 to 70% of its defense needs. The summit will emphasize India's intent to diversify its defense and energy partnerships while maintaining strong working relationship with Russia, even amid global sanctions and shifting geopolitical pressures. Now for this discussion, we welcome former Ambassador Suresh Goyal. He's a former Indian ambassador, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Ambassador, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, looking at all this, how do you analyze current India-Russia relations?
Strategically very important, not only for the reasons of historicity. We have traditionally had very good relations, very important in defense relationship, supply of space technologies, our BrahMos program. There have been close cooperation with Russia in the initial stages, etc., etc. Defense equipment, you will recall our aircraft, Sukhoi, that we acquired from Russia, quite a few things, but more importantly, Russia has proved to be a reliable friend and a partner in areas of geopolitics. They have been with us at the time of need in 1971, if you remember. Again, in terms of our own various differences with the USA and in the area. So historically, the relations have been very good, strategically very important, and very intense. And I think the same historicity of the relationship does carry into the present context also. There are, of course, complexities now were introduced after 1991, end of Cold War, when Russian economy have come to be increasingly in rather confusion, if I may say so. They are now getting out of that confusion of the economy, slowly using their energy resources. So on the whole, extremely important relationship. Additional complications are really Russia's relationship with China, which has now become increasingly closer because of the changed circumstances, and the USA, which now is trying to put pressure on Russia because of Ukraine war, and also to play to keeping in eye the situation in Europe and the geocomplexities. So on the whole, I would say extremely important in terms of a trade and defense partnership, energy partnership, as well as connectivity, Central Asia, but more complex than before.
Yes, and what do you think will be high on the agenda for the talks between Vladimir Putin and Modi's talks, and how do you think how will US be eyeing all these developments of Russia-India relations?
US eyes will be really on I think, the oil trade between Russia and India. They will be, Trump particularly will be extremely wary if the oil supplies from Russia continue as they are or increase. So they will have very careful eyes on what happens on that front, as well as defense partnership. But we should be also interested, besides trade and defense, we should also be interested in the situation in Central Asia. CSO is an extremely important area for Russia. China is trying to get into the area. China is also Shanghai Organization, which actually brings together China, Russia, and the Central Asian states, SCO. So, and also I think the Arctic route in terms of the northern connectivity routes are very important. China and Russia are playing an increasing role. USA is trying to find a foothold, and India should be wanting to be a player in the area because of minerals as well as because of the connectivity towards the north.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Ambassador Suresh Goyal for sharing that. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, moving on, when asked about the recent November 10 Delhi blasts and will Russia be supporting India in taking action against the terrorist bases in Pakistan, Dmitry Peskov has stated that Russia strongly condemns terrorism and all sources that it originates from. He has also added that Russia has suffered in the past from terrorist activities. Let's listen in.
We're all looking forward to President Putin's visit and welcoming him in here in India. As you are aware, India's national capital has had one of its worst terror attacks in more than a decade. Would Russia support India in the event of India taking any action against terrorist bases in Pakistan? And the second question, you mentioned free of those who are trying to interfere with international trade. What is the role of the rupee, ruble, and the yuan in international trade as you see it in the years to come? Thank you.
Well, we strongly condemn terrorism, whatever form of this terrorism and whatever source of this terrorism is. Our country has suffered a lot from the hands of terrorists, and we know the pain of losing people because of acts of terror. And we remember and will be always remembering this pain. And we know that India has faced this threat numerous times, and we stay together with people of India, and we do condemn terrorism. And of course, we think that the only way to combat terrorism is to have an international cooperation. Unfortunately, the divisions that we have now with the European countries limit this possibility for us, but those possibilities are open in alternative directions, like India, like other countries in the east of Russia. So we'll be ready to cooperate with our Indian friends in combating terror.
A high-intensity explosion ripped through a slow-moving car at a traffic signal near Delhi's Red Fort on November 10th, killing 15 people and injuring several others. The National Investigation Agency recently searched 8 sites across Kashmir in connection with what investigators describe as a white-collar terror network linked to the recent car blast. Now for this discussion, we welcome back Ambassador Suresh Goyal. He's a former Indian ambassador, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Ambassador, for staying with us. Now, looking at the answer by Mr. Peskov on the questions asked by our CEO Rishabh Gulati, what political implications could arise for Pakistan-Russia relations if there is any? And what if Moscow chooses a more neutral stance versus actively supporting India's actions against terrorist bases in Pakistan?
Asima, let us put it this way.
Yes, sure.
When we had Operation Sindhu, Prime Minister stated very clearly that we are just pausing the operation. It is not the end of the operation. And he clearly announced that we are going to be treating the terrorist activities as an act of war. And therefore, theoretically speaking, and in terms of strategy, all options are open to us. And the option of armed action against those who perpetrated this terrorism action is open to us. The case is under investigation, and as and when it is clearly determined that there was connections to Pakistan, and I think there is a lot of evidence that yes, there were connections in Pakistan, that there was communications with the terror networks based in Pakistan. The option is available to India to undertake any military mission. Non-intrusive kind of a nature, will be kinetic, but non-intrusive, no movement of personnel into the area. Now, the point really here is that if India does think it's appropriate to take the action, will Russia support it? Yes, Russia has supported India in the past. Russia will support India in even at the present juncture. And I know that there will be sensitivities regarding Pakistan, but I don't think that will come in the way Russia will support. But whether Russia will be happy with it, or Russia will actually we could undertake consultations with Russia, and Russia may advise, or Russia may advise caution in the matter, is entirely a different issue, really. No military action can be taken in just as a military action. One has to think of consequences and the results in many different areas. It has to be carefully thought of. Therefore, all I would say is, while the options are available, I'm sure Indian leaders will think very carefully about how to proceed ahead and what action to take, uh, keeping in view all the other factors, Russia, the possible reactions from the USA, not just Pakistan, China. Ours is a very sensitive neighborhood. I think I will simply say this for the time being and wait for any further developments.
Great. With that, I would like to thank Ambassador Suresh Goyal for sharing that. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, moving to the neighbor Pakistan, after weeks of being denied access, former Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan's sisters were allowed to meet him today at Adiala jail in Rawalpindi. The meeting comes as Khan's supporters from the PTI party had threatened mass protests over concerns about his health and treatment in prison. Authorities permitted the visit for Khan's sister, Uzma, and vetted lawyer under a strict GAG order preventing discussions on social media. Supporters and journalists gathered outside the jail as the sisters are expected to address the media and provide updates on Khan's condition. This visit marks a key moment in the ongoing unrest surrounding the imprisoned former Prime Minister. Now for this discussion, we welcome back Ambassador Suresh Goyal. Thank you very much, Ambassador, for staying with us. Now, it seems like a Pakistani government was pressured into letting his sisters see him, as a lot of rumors about his unaliving was surfacing. What's your analysis on the current status of Imran Khan, and how do you see Imran Khan's importance or role among his supporters and for Pakistan's democracy or rule of law?
Let us not talk about democracy and the rule of law in Pakistan. We know the political situation. We know who is in power there. Army is in power clearly without any doubt. And the civilian government is basically just an appendix to the main protagonist, which is Asim Munir. And they will play their role accordingly. The main issue here really is that Imran Khan was a challenger to the army's authority. He was incarcerated in the jail, and over the last 1 week, 2 weeks, etc., there was no access to Imran Khan, and there was suspicion that he had been ill-treated or he was in a bad shape in the jail, and also to the extent whether he's still alive or not. Now, the fact is that if the sisters have been able to meet, clearly he's still alive. What shape he is in, whether he has been ill-treated or not, we have no idea. The sister said that they will talk to the press or they will make a media statement afterwards, which I have not heard so far. So I would rather wait to see what the sisters say to the media. I'm quite certain that the media will try to find out if Imran Khan is well, any sign of torture or ill treatment, and sisters will have to be careful in giving the answers, because clearly there will be pressure from the army, not in terms of just on sisters, but how their responses might lead to further treatment of Imran Khan in the jail. Again, there are many unknowns here. Let us see what they say to the media, but I'm quite certain that if Imran Khan was not allowed to meet anyone for a long time, there must have been a reason, and the only reason I can think of is the Imran Khan not well, or pressure on Imran Khan not to meet anyone outside in the civil society, including his family.
100%. Yes, we will be eyeing all that in NewsX World. With
Yes.
that, I would like to thank Ambassador Suresh Goyal for joining us today and sharing that insight throughout our news. Thank you very much. Now we have a breaking news. Indonesia is facing an escalating disaster on Sumatra Island. The National Disaster Agency has now said that the death toll from last week's floods and landslides have climbed to 753 people, while more than 500 people are still missing, and the number of those affected has surged to around 1.1 million people across 3 provinces. Rescue teams continue to work in difficult conditions, with roads blocked and power outages hampering access to remote areas. Authorities warn that while the toll has been adjusted, the humanitarian situation remains critical, with urgent aid still needed for those displaced. Now, moving the focus to Hong Kong, Hong Kong's leader, John Lee, has announced the creation of a judge-led independent committee to investigate last week's devastating apartment fire that has killed 151 people. The city's deadliest residential blaze since 1980. Authorities say the fire spread rapidly due to substandard scaffolding netting that failed fire resistance standards. Lee has said that the committee will conduct a comprehensive review of building safety, supervision, construction, and maintenance practices to prevent similar tragedies. Let's in fact listen into what the Hong Kong Chief Executive John Lee has shared.
Therefore, while criminal and fire investigations are proceeding continuously, I will establish an independent committee to conduct comprehensive and in-depth review to reform the building work system and prevent similar tragedies from occurring in the future.
Meanwhile, Hong Kong's police and the anti-corruption watchdog has arrested 14 people, 13 on suspicion of manslaughter, for using substandard materials and attempting to evade inspections. The fire has prompted widespread grief and calls for accountability. Lee has stressed that authorities will hold those responsible to account, while also cracking down on anyone exploiting the tragedy for political purposes. Families have begun returning to Wang Fuk Court to perform funeral rites for the victims. Now for this discussion, we welcome Mr. Adam Claremont. He's a freelance journalist specialized in fire safety, joins us live from Hong Kong. Thank you very much, Mr. Adam, for joining us. Welcome to NewsX World. Now, looking at this, what implications does this tragedy have for Hong Kong's construction industry and future enforcement of safety? And what more can you tell us about this unfolding situation?
Well, first and foremost, I think it's going to have tremendous consequences for the building industry. After disasters of this magnitude, it's almost a given that substantial reform will be made and there'll be much more strict safety rules implemented. This is basically how safety rules are created. They're written in blood. As far as the disaster is concerned, I would like to begin our discussions by talking about the concept of normalization of deviance. And that's a concept in disaster sociology research where noncompliance becomes the new normal. The term was invented by a sociologist who was studying the Challenger disaster. And if anyone recalls that, there were numerous problems with the O-rings prior to the launch of the Challenger. However, it became the new normal, even though they weren't within specifications or engineering tolerances. They had launched on several occasions with no consequences. However, on one particular morning where the temperature was too cold, the O-rings reacted differently, and the margin of safety, which was eroded by the ignoring engineering tolerance, evaporated, which led to the disaster. And just to make a point that research is sold that the normalization of deviance doesn't actually require bad people. Perfectly good people that are busy, under pressure, making incremental compromises are usually the factors that lead to a normalization of deviance. But the outcome is the same, absolute catastrophe.
Yes, right. And Mr. Adams, can you tell us about what led to the formation of an independent judge-led committee?
Well, again, I think it's normal to expect that some committee will review a disaster of this magnitude. In this particular case, the chief executive, John Lee, has decided it should be an independent committee led by a judge. I think that's primarily to placate the public anger. There's a small but vocal element that seems to blame the government for this. However, at this point in time, I don't see anything that suggests that the government didn't do what they were supposed to. There were certainly inspections done. Whether the inspectors were negligent in their duties or whether they was misled remains to be seen. But from my perspective, there are a number of causes of this tragedy. And I don't think that you can pin the blame on the government, even if there were lax inspections. A number of things had to happen, which leads me to the next concept in disaster research, which is called the Swiss cheese model. And that was a term coined by a British psychologist named James Reardon back in 1990, which explains how accidents like this occur. And it's brilliant in its simplicity. Imagine that you had multiple slices of Swiss cheese lined up. Each slice represents a layer of protection in the building. For instance, building codes, which require them to implement safety things such as compartmentalized stairways so people can evacuate. You have fire inspections to make sure that those rules are filed. Some buildings have sprinkler systems to extinguish a fire. They have evacuation plans. We have staff training. And each slice has holes representing weaknesses or failures. In a well-designed system, those holes are random and scattered. If one layer fails, say an inspector misses something such as flammable mesh, the next layer catches it. But disasters happen when all the holes line up perfectly. A flawed regulation, a missed inspection, faulty materials, poor training, broken equipment. When all of those things align, a straight path opens from hazard to catastrophe. And the Tai Po fire is a textbook example of every single slice of cheese had holes and they all lined up on the same day.
Thank you very much for sharing that extensive knowledge on this, Mr. Adam Claremont, for joining us as a freelance journalist specialized in fire safety from Hong Kong. Now we have a breaking news. According to a Federal Bureau of Prisons record, former Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez was freed from U.S. prison, where he has been serving a 45-year sentence for drug trafficking and firearms offenses. Hernandez's wife, Ana Garcia, has shared on social media that his release followed a pardon granted by U.S. President Donald Trump. Now we move on the focus to Taiwan. Taiwanese President Lai Ching-te has overseen a drone training session for the island's reserve forces in Yilan, calling it a significant step forward for the military. The visit comes just days after the announcement of a new $40 billion defense spending plan aimed at countering China during the training instructors with experience from the United States that had helped integrate drones into reserve units, enhancing combat readiness and overall tactical capabilities.
无人机的操作与应用，纳入后备部队的训练，这项变革是国军后备训练的新的里程碑。和平不可能靠一纸和平协议就能够获得，也不可能屈从侵略者的主张。 就有办法得到和平。即便是要去进行和解的工作，也必须要有强大的力量做后盾，才能够保护国家整体利益。如果没有足够的力量做后盾的话，所谓和解，最终